Absolutely. The wrapping it back around just to the business case on this one. I specifically liked in the sales side is one where you talked about a new hire in a hotel,
Yep.
and just because we do have a lot of people that are in the sales side, also the marketing side, which I think this plays into. Can you kind of give just a high level on kind of the listening and what you can do and how you can leverage social CRM to potentially drive sales leads your way, I guess is the best way to look at it. And the flip side too is obviously if I'm sitting on the other side of the fence and someone's contacting me or sending me information almost immediately in my new position, it becomes almost creepy, I think, actually, from that standpoint,
Yeah.
right? So
Well, it's yeah. You think of hotels. I remember seeing some story on Twitter about a year ago where some guy was waiting in line to check into a hotel in Las Vegas. I think he was in town for like the Consumer Electronics Show or something like
mhm.
that. And I've actually never been to Vegas, but I'm sure I'll go sometime. But anyway, he was trying to check in, and I think he got bumped. Basically, the hotel did not have a room available for him. They were oversold, even though he had a reservation. He tweeted it. Like 5 minutes later, he got a direct message on Twitter from a hotel that was 2 blocks away, and they're like, "Come on over. We'll get you right in."
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
really?
But that's the
that
listening, right? That's what's going on.
that's or I mean, here's another example. The other day, I was on my way to Sacramento, California. It's about an hour and a half away from where I live. Just taking a little, kind of a local vacation with my fiance. I was curious about where to eat. I put a tweet up. We had two great meals because of people just in our network that we knew who just bam, like within minutes, we had restaurant
So it's
recommendations.
the listening.
And so I mean, it's not just companies that are listening at that speed. It's the customers themselves that are listening at that
Well, yeah,
speed.
you get the
And
evangelists from the client, from the customers. That's a nice thing to
Well,
get.
that's your testimonial network right there.
Yeah.
That's
And it's also that you also have help in doing damage control at that rate too. So let's say for example you owned a food company and there was a rumor. I had a client, a pet food company, about 4 years ago that had a rumor that their food was tainted with melamine from the Chinese melamine tainting
Hmm.
scandal. Turned out there was nothing wrong with their product. It was totally legit. But this happened before Twitter, before the social web really got big. If it had happened today, I think they would have been able to get the message out there that their food was completely unaffected. But because of what happened, they lost probably a few $1 million in
Wow.
sales. So, I mean, is there a tangible cost benefit to social customer relationship management? Absolutely.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's quite amazing how what kind of information you can pull off right now. Same thing with I was actually working with a client out of Houston, a potential client out of Houston. I just realized this guy was kind of in his late 50s, early 60s, and he needed more personal interaction. So I basically put out online, is anyone capable of doing this in Houston? Literally within like 10 seconds, I got a flood of activity against this one and hooked him up with the person that I deemed was most appropriate to go and help them with that sort of stuff. So works very well.
Yeah, and it's also just you'll notice that the speed of dissemination of information has completely changed. Like I remember I was on some website the other day, and I saw a note on Twitter from Mark Benioff. He's the CEO of the company
Yeah.
Salesforce. That Steve Jobs had passed away, or that the AP was reporting that he had passed away. And I mean, and this was just like literally like probably 45 minutes after it happened. And I was just thinking, my gosh, like in the past, like 10, 15 years ago, you would see things like this, but you'd see them the next day in the
Yeah.
newspaper. I mean, now this stuff within just minutes. You're like, my
Yeah.
gosh, like
and it
how is this even possible?
and if you're an organization, especially if you're a publicly traded company, you need to be on top of that. You need to be very transparent. Otherwise, that rumor mill just will sink you, I imagine.
Yeah, it's also easy to reach out and correct things too. So I
Mhm.
mean, there's positives and negatives, and but I think we're going a little too deeply into the public relations side of
Yeah.
it, and maybe not enough into the collaboration side of it. I mean, there's so many examples right now of companies that are finally able to do what their customers truly want, and I think the whole reason for social customer management is to really let your enterprise or your company, whether it's a big company or a small kung fu studio, to let it be driven by customer intent. And I'll give you an example. One of my clients is this martial arts place, Soja. They're based in Oakland, California. They're kind of a medium-sized martial arts studio. It's sojamartialarts.com, and they got requests on the social web from folks who just wanted to do plain old self-defense, not fancy kung fu of any kind. So as a result, bam, they got a self-defense class that's 3 hours long this weekend. So I mean, it can be even little things like creating a one-time new product offering.
Hmm.
I mean, where do you think Ben and Jerry's got all of their new ice cream flavors?
Well,
Yeah.
got 'em from the from
Yeah.
from the crowd.
Yeah, from the crowd. So
It's
and
interesting.
granted, the crowd's not right all the time. You might look at the crowd's ideas and be like, oh, that's a terrible idea. We're not doing that. But at least now you have the valve where you can hear it.
You know, I don't know where I read this, but someone had compared the different ways of communicating to a ripple versus a splash. Have you ever heard that analogy?
No.
So basically, you know, when you have a Q&A with a client, and it's a one-on-one Q&A, so somebody contacts you by phone or emails you, and then you answer that email, and you might CC one or two other people in that response. It's a problem, let's say, and you've answered that problem. That's typically a splash reaction. This online sort of networking and an exchange, a forum-based exchange, turns that transaction into a ripple, because if someone were to ask that same question in an open forum and were answered in that open forum, that person would be answered. Anybody associated with the company would see the question and answer. Anyone else who's interested in the subject matter at that time would be able to participate in an answer. And in future, anyone on the internet who has a similar question could post that question and have an answer instantly through that sort of open findability. Similar kind of approach to social CRM, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're going to reach out to a large base at any one time, I mean, you have to be comfortable knowing that there's going to be a lot of different things that are going to come in. And, you know, there's brands that whenever a brand or even a person puts anything out there, they have to know that whatever they put out, they're going to get stuff in return that may or may not be what they want. And they have to equip themselves with you know, the technology to manage that. And I think, you know, there's a lot of companies that jump into social media feed first and don't understand this.
It's I always make it akin to, you go to a movie theater and you go fire and everyone runs for the door and they all get stuck, right? But the concept behind it is, you know, you don't. There's a lot of people out there that don't understand what they're doing and the power of actually starting to engage with people too, right? So
yeah, they don't understand the day-to-day ramifications of what it takes to support that. Like, imagine if, you know, you had a sales team that only communicated with customers via email, and then you suddenly purchased 5 phone lines from the phone company, but you didn't staff anyone to answer those phone lines, and then you published the phone number on all of your literature and business cards and such. The phones are going to start ringing.
Yeah, and you have to be ready to answer them. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's just another channel. Yeah. I don't understand why someone would say, oh well, gosh, I don't think we can put a full-time resource on this. I'm like, well, do you have a full-time resource on email? And they're like, oh yeah, our whole company's on email. And then you're like, well, do you have a full-time resource on the telephone? Oh yeah, well, everyone has a telephone. Okay, well, it sounds like you're gonna need a full-time resource on this, or don't do it.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we were talking earlier about, you know, the implementation and what kind of systems tie into social CRM. You know, obviously, sure. I would say that, and I'm going to take the social out. I know CRMs, CRMs and ERPs, for example, if not
Wait, what do these acronyms stand for? You're acronyming us to death.
Yeah, okay, well, okay, sorry, yeah, we should clarify the client relationship management or the enterprise resource planning stuff. Any larger system or anything that goes into a company, if not properly planned, is destined for failure. I forget, especially on the enterprise resource planning side, it's about
the failure rate can be 40 to 60%.
Yeah, and it's astronomical. What are the things that you see that really kill a CRM process or a social CRM process in an organization?
Actually, funny you should ask. I wrote an entire chapter about it. It's the 14th chapter of my book. I was thinking, who is the biggest expert in the world on CRM failure? There's one guy, actually. His name is Michael Krigsman. He's based in Boston, and he writes for ZDNet. He has this column. The title is horrible. It's Black Box, like, you know, when a plane crashes.
Yeah. Ouch.
So basically all Michael writes about is IT failures of all kinds, be they enterprise resource planning, customer relationship management. And so I'm just going to read you, you know, the 3 primary reasons that these things fail. And this is straight from the mouth of Michael. He's on Twitter, he's M. Krigsman. He's a great guy to follow. Just basically on any project that you don't want to fail, whether it's IT or not. So there's 3 things. The first one is poor strategy. So, like, basically, if the company doesn't have clear plans, goals, and objectives, that's the first thing that can kill it. The second one out of the 3 is an overfocus on technology. Because, like, companies just don't focus enough. Yeah, I mean, can you buy software and install it? Sure. Just write the check and click install. But unless there's significant change management efforts, to engage the users, it's going to be really tough to get anybody on board. And then the last thing is kind of, this may sound a little hippy dippy, but it's managing and minimizing culture. The problem with a lot of social customer relationship management deployments is they don't take the company's culture into account. And every company in the world has a totally different culture and different cultural values. So, I think there's a lot of groundwork that has to be done before doing that. Like I got a call from a large online training company in Southern California the other day. They want to deploy something like this. The very first thing I'm going to do is just go department to department and be like, how do you feel about this? Is this something that you culturally can embrace or your company culturally can embrace? Or you think this is a terrible idea?
Well, and you have to deal with data hoarding as well. A lot of people are protecting their positions, thinking they don't want to share, and they're very private about their daily work activity. Some companies just can't break that nut. Have you seen that kind of scenario?
As far as like companies people within a company not wanting to deploy a social customer relationship management solution because they're afraid that if their data is shared with other persons in the company, that it will hurt their promotion path.
They'll lose control.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and that's why a lot of these engagements get shut down before they happen. And so, for example, if I got that vibe from, say, the entire crew of sales managers from a company, I would say, okay, here's my strategic recommendation: do nothing.
Yeah.
And watch the competitive advantage wane as you do that, I imagine. So.
Yeah, that's one of the big reasons that companies jump headfirst into social customer relationship management. If you notice, there were like 60,000 people attending, or maybe 80,000 people attending the Salesforce Dreamforce conference in San Francisco a few weeks ago. They weren't all there to like see, Metallica play. Granted, that was probably pretty cool, but I'm down for a Metallica gig anytime. But no, they were there because they wanted to know, what are the benefits, specifically the immediate benefits of having a social enterprise? And that's whether you have a company of 10,000 people or just, let's say you own a chain of 6 restaurants and you want to make that a social enterprise. Like, I think it was Papa John's used to manage, I think it was like 200 regional pizza places using Excel spreadsheets hosted on the server. It's in the book. Like I had to read the case study like 4 times. I'm like, Papa John's, they make like millions and millions on pizza. How could they have done this on Excel? Well, turns out they're like, you know what? We kind of want to make billions instead of millions. And they switched their business to the cloud. If you want to look at the case study, just type in Papa John's Salesforce. Let me see if I can find it.
It's interesting you say that. It's, Excel is the world's largest database, right? And it's there's so many companies. Even I used to run across it when I was owned a software company that they would run their entire financials on Excel. We're talking like huge companies, $500 million in revenue, $1 billion in revenue, running their financials on Excel. It was just crazy.
Yeah, and it's so there's so many companies that have made the jump now to some sort of social customer relationship management platform and seen immediate results. And if you want case studies that are a little bit more neutral, I would say don't look at the vendor websites, because obviously the ones that you're going to see at Oracle's website or Salesforce's website may not be sort of like the cleanest case studies out there. If you want stuff that's a little less biased, I'd say go to the bookstore, buy books. There's 2 books on social CRM that I can think of. My book, and of course the great one that came before it, which was called CRM at the Speed of Light. And that's by my friend Paul Greenberg. He's based out of Washington, D.C. area. And there's a book called CRM at the Speed of Light. It's got a big green cover. And that also has some wonderful case studies. So between those 2 books, if you want to know if CRM is actually going to work for your company, those are the 2 that I'd read.
Do you, when you're actually in these companies, you're engaging right across the board. Do you find it really tough to get the C-level to buy off on this, or do you find that they're a lot easier? It's just more the middle management that could create the barriers to actually implement?
Yeah, you have to remember what language everybody speaks within a company. Like, I don't know if anyone's read the Skip Miller book, Proactive Selling, but you have your managers and directors who are speaking a highly tactical language. Skip Miller calls it, they speak Spanish. Then you have your VPs who speak, they speak the language of basic value, which is usually return on investment, risk or risk mitigation, brand, which is one of the softer value points, and then of course time, how much time is saved or wasted, and Skip Miller calls that speaking Russian. And then you have your C-level executives who speak what's called Greek, and all they really care about is revenue, earn revenue before taxes, things like that, and especially profit. And so if you can manage to illustrate the value proposition of social customer relationship management to all 3 levels in the language that they correctly speak, you'll be successful. But if you try and sell fans and followers to a CEO, get out of town. Like,
Yeah.
that's pointless.
Yeah. It's a bit of fluff that they may be
Yeah.
looking at, right?
Yeah, it just doesn't even appeal to them. Whereas if you tell the VP of marketing, hey, listen, you're going to hit your marketing revenue goals if you deploy this solution and manage it properly, and you tell the CEO, look, profitability has increased for the following 5 companies by doing this, this, and this. Do you want to take a shot at this? And also, when you have a big company, these projects don't just go all at once. They typically go in small pilot projects, and then a larger pilot. Then it's more of a crawl, walk, run strategy. Yeah. Whereas a smaller company, if you and I owned 2 pet stores with 30 employees, yeah, sure, maybe we could just pull the trigger. But if you own Hewlett Packard, I don't think it's going to go off in one blast.
So are you a believer in controlling your network and running your own online forum for all of these communication methods, or do you think that the future is going to be services like Google Plus and other social networks, the Facebook evolution? Do you think those mediums are going to be so overpowering that you're not going to be able to run your own internal version of it?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think my answer is both. I have no preference, and I think the way to look at this is take a look at a company like Autodesk. They're a real good example. They're our neighbors right off the road. If you know anyone who's an architect or anyone who's an engineer or anyone who does 3D design, you mention the phrase Autodesk, and they'll be like, "Oh yeah, of course, I use it every day." They make the building you're standing in right now was probably designed using an Autodesk project if the building is newer than like 1990. Mm-hmm. And so they're a company. Then if you go to Autodesk.com, you'll look at where it says community, and you will be blown away by the amount of user communities and forums they have and how vital and vibrant they are. But then if you look on the right side of the page, you're like, they also connect to the outside world too. Like Autodesk has 25,000 people they're engaging with on a minute-to-minute basis on Twitter, a zillion on Facebook, YouTube, all that kind of stuff. They have wikis, they have dozens of blogs of their own. So it's the answer, generally speaking, if you have a large amount of customers, is, well, both. Mm. It's not enough to just have, your own online forums where you can, you can manage the conversation. But there's also going to be things that your customers want where they don't feel like knocking on your door and coming in. They might just want to talk about it on their turf. You have to be, just like a therapist has to meet the client where they are, a consultant needs to meet the client where they are, a business on the social web has to meet the customer where they are.
Yeah, you have to already have a basic understanding of where your customer is, and then if you engage them in that world.
If you're not in acceptance around that, this may sound like very Buddhist kind of principle, but if your company is not in acceptance around where the customer is, how are you going to have a loving relationship with that customer?
Gotcha.
Chris, I think we should wrap it up. We are at almost an hour here.
Yeah, we are. One of the things, Adam, I would like to say is just kind of give you a bit of a space here to just, if people want to contact you, reach out to you, and I know you've got some wonderful things to share with people that are viewing this. First of all, where should people get a hold of you? Should they go to your website?
Sure, yeah. So it depends what you want. If you want, there's actually this $520 audio course that we just wanted to give away to people. It's an 8-hour audio course, and of course you can ask me questions on our free teleclasses. So I'll give you the URL for that. Excellent. Maybe you could post it on the screen. It's metz.customerhub.net. So if you go there, if you go to metz.customerhub.net, you can register for free, and then you'll get all of our audio courses, and you can just listen to them in the car or on your iPod.
That's .net, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, metz.customerhub.net. And then if you want to download a couple of free chapters from the new book, I made about a half-hour MP3 for you to listen to. But that's just at adammetz.com. That's ADAMMETZ.com. And there's another ebook there called The Metz Way that you can download too. It's about 30 pages long. So that'll give you a lot of stuff to listen to and read, and it'll teach you about not just social customer management, but having passionate relationships with your customers and actually just being passionate about what you do for a living, and also how to get to that if you're not currently there. So that's a good way to reach me, and of course you can email me from the website, just adammetz.com.
What about anyone trying to engage you in potential consulting here and stuff like that? We'd like to give you a bit of a form on that too. So.
Sure, yeah, just adammetz.com. You can ping me on Twitter too. It's just I'm the Metz on Twitter. I'm pretty easy guy to find, and you can call me at 510-854-METZ.
Well, what we'll do is we'll follow up here with a link to that course and some of the links to your material, and of course a link to the actual book where people can. Now, is your book is available in hardback, but is it also available in audiobook or?
Yeah, so the deal is this. It's funny that you mentioned that. Anyone who's thinking of buying the book for the next 6 days before October 20th, sit tight, actually. Don't buy the book until the 20th. Here's the reason. If you go to socialcustomerbook.com, we're giving away $1,000 worth of free stuff only if you buy the book on October 20th. It's
Okay.
only for 1 day. So it's socialcustomerbook.com. So if you want, download the first couple chapters and chill out with those, but sit tight. Don't buy the book until next Thursday. And then as far as paperback goes, I have a hunch it'll probably come out in paperback next summer.
Yeah. Well, that's great.
And in the meantime, it should be out on the Amazon Kindle and the Barnes & Noble Nook within a week.
Okay.
If it's not, it was up. The Kindle version was up the other day, but I think Amazon made some edits to it, so it should be back up on Kindle rather shortly.
Gotcha.
Great. Well, thank you very much for joining today.
Of course.
It's great, and of course, this is going to be a rebroadcast, so all of that information will be available leading up to that great signature moment of your official book promotion. So we'll obviously be leading people over to that when they come and register and watch this rebroadcast.
Awesome.
Any?
Well, thanks so much, Chris and Kirsten. I really appreciate you guys taking the time. I hope everybody who reads The Social Customer is able to look at it and just make a quick decision on whether this is something that's good and profitable for your company, or if not, Harry Potter awaits.
Yeah, and we really appreciate your give forward attitude. That's key, and it's symbolic of your beliefs with regards to using this kind of technology.
And as I'm holding it up again, and I'm looking, I see you got my buddy Jeffrey Gittimer, who's got an endorsement on the back here. So it's if Jeffrey says it's good, it's got to be good.
Look at all those notes that Chris has in that book. I mean,
actually, you know what? I really
sticking out of it.
I thought this was a great book. Especially, I'm gonna plug the sales and marketing side of it, right? Because I mean, if you're listening and you're hearing out there, we often say it's a great source of trying to figure out how to get sales leads or try to engage in that kind of process, right?
Yeah.
And that's, to me, is just one of the most ultimates on going down this path, right?
And I think it's way cheaper to keep your current customers than it is to go out and get new ones. I think it's 5 times more pricey to go out and score a new customer than it is to sell to a current customer.
Absolutely.
So it's like why not just keep the awesome customers you have? And this book will just tell you how to do that.
That's your mantra, Chris, right
exactly.
there. Best is the referrals, and keep them happy.
You betcha.
Thanks very much, Adam.
Thank you. Talk to you guys soon.
You betcha. Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye.
Well, that's great.